Marriage is like a software update. You know it's necessary, but it never really finishes installing properly, and half the features stop working after a few years. That's what I told myself every morning while watching Amelia apply her makeup with the precision of a surgeon preparing for a complex operation. My name is Ethan Drake, and I'm 39 years old. I design security systems for corporate networks, which means I spend my days thinking about how people try to break into places they don't belong. Ironic, considering what was happening in my own home. "You're staring again," Amelia said without looking at me in the bathroom mirror. Her voice carried that familiar edge of irritation that had become as much a part of our morning routine as coffee and toast. "Just admiring my beautiful wife," I replied, though we both knew that wasn't entirely true anymore. Amelia Drake, 36, worked as an HR director at a mid-sized consulting firm downtown. She had the kind of polished appearance that screamed success, blonde hair always perfectly styled, clothes that cost more than my monthly car payment, and a smile she could turn on and off like a light switch. Lately, that smile rarely made an appearance at home. "I'll be late tonight," she announced, capping her lipstick with a decisive click. "Tennis lesson with Greg, then dinner with the girls." Greg Carter. The name had been popping up in our conversations with increasing frequency over the past 3 months. Real estate broker, divorced, drives a BMW that probably costs more than most people's annual salary. Everything about him screamed midlife crisis, from his expensive haircut to his overly white teeth. "Another lesson?" I asked, keeping my tone neutral. "You've been playing a lot lately." "I'm getting good at it." She turned to face me, and for a moment I caught something in her expression. Guilt, maybe, or defiance. "You should try it sometime. Might help with that stress you're always carrying around." The stress she was referring to came from working 60-hour weeks to maintain the lifestyle she'd grown accustomed to. The house in Maple Ridge, private school for our daughters, the country club membership she insisted we needed for networking opportunities. All of it balanced on my shoulders while she played tennis with Greg. Our daughters, Lily and Emma, were already downstairs having breakfast. Lily, 11, had inherited my analytical mind and her mother's sharp tongue. Emma, 8, was pure sunshine, or had been, until she started noticing the tension between her parents. "Dad, Mom forgot to sign my permission slip again," Lily announced as I entered the kitchen. "I didn't forget," Amelia said, breezing past us toward the garage. "I just don't have time right now. Ethan can forge it." "It's not forging if I'm your husband," I called after her, but the garage door was already closing. Lily rolled her eyes with the practiced disdain of a preteen. "She's been weird lately. Weirder than usual, I mean." "Your mother's just busy with work," I said, though the explanation felt hollow even to me. Emma looked up from her cereal bowl with those wide, trusting eyes that could break your heart. "Is Mom mad at us?" "No, sweetheart. Mom's not mad at anyone." Another lie to add to the growing collection. The truth was, I'd been noticing things. Small things at first. Late nights that became later, phone calls she took in other rooms, credit card charges from restaurants I'd never been to. Then there were the bigger things, like the way she'd started flinching when I touched her, or how she'd begun treating our home like a hotel she was temporarily staying at. After dropping the girls at school, I sat in my car for a few minutes, watching other parents go through their morning routines. Normal couples discussing weekend plans, sharing quick embraces before heading off to work. When had Amelia and I stopped being normal? My phone buzzed with a text from my best friend Ryan, who lived 3 houses down from us. "Coffee later? You look like you need it." Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. Ryan Martinez worked from home as a freelance graphic designer, which meant he had a front row seat to the neighborhood drama. He'd been my friend since college, and he had the annoying habit of being right about things I didn't want to hear. "Can't. Big presentation today," I texted back. "Rain check then, but Ethan, we need to talk soon." That message sent a chill through me. Ryan wasn't dramatic by nature. If he thought we needed to talk, it meant he'd noticed something I'd been trying to ignore. The office provided a welcome distraction. I spent the morning reviewing security protocols for a new client, losing myself in the familiar world of firewalls and encryption. It was a world where problems had solutions, where threats could be identified and neutralized with the right combination of technology and planning. Around noon, my phone rang. Unknown number. "Mr. Drake, this is Jennifer from Westfield Tennis Club. I'm calling about your wife's account." "What about it?" "Well, there seems to be some confusion about her membership status. Our records show she's been using the courts regularly, but the payments have been coming from a Mr. Greg Carter's account. We just wanted to clarify the billing arrangement." I felt something cold settle in my stomach. "I see. Let me look into that and get back to you. Of course. And Mr. Drake? I probably shouldn't mention this, but they've been very close. Some of the other members have commented. I thought you should know. The call ended, leaving me staring at my computer screen without seeing it. Very close. The euphemism hung in the air like smoke from a fire I'd been pretending wasn't burning. I spent the rest of the day in a strange state of hyper-awareness, as if someone had adjusted the contrast on reality. Every conversation felt loaded with hidden meaning. Every routine interaction seemed to carry weight I'd never noticed before. When I got home that evening, the house was empty, except for Mrs. Patterson, our babysitter, who was helping the girls with homework. "Mrs. Drake called," she said. "She'll be very late tonight. Something about a work dinner running long." Another lie. The work dinner was supposed to be with the girls, Taylor and Julia, Amelia's closest friends from the country club, but I'd seen Julia at the grocery store an hour ago, very much not at any dinner. After Mrs. Patterson left and the girls were in bed, I found myself standing in our bedroom, looking at the space Amelia and I had shared for 12 years. The room felt different now, like a stage set for a play I wasn't auditioning for. I opened her closet and immediately felt like an intruder in my own home. But there it was, a new dress I'd never seen, still tagged, from a boutique that specialized in the kind of outfit you wore to impress someone special, someone who wasn't your husband. My phone buzzed. Text from Amelia. "Don't wait up. Long night." I stared at those 3 words for a long time. Long night. Doing what? With whom? And why did she think she could just dismiss me with a casual text? That's when I made my first decision. Not a big one, not dramatic or life-changing. Just a small choice to stop pretending I didn't see what was right in front of me. I walked to my office and opened a new document on my computer. At the top, I typed, "Things I know for certain." Then I began to list them. 1. Amelia is having an affair with Greg Carter. 2. She's using money from our joint account to fund it. 3. She thinks I'm too weak or too stupid to do anything about it. 4. She's wrong about that last part. I saved the document and closed the laptop. Tomorrow I would start gathering evidence. Not for a lawyer, not yet, but for myself. Because after 15 years of marriage, I deserved to know exactly what I was dealing with. When Amelia finally came home at 2:30 a.m., I pretended to be asleep. She slipped into bed without a word, her hair smelling like cologne that wasn't mine, and her skin carrying the warmth of hands that weren't mine. "Ethan," she whispered. I didn't answer. "I know you're awake." Still nothing from me. She sighed, a sound filled with what might have been regret or relief. "We need to talk soon. About us. About what we want." What we want. As if this was a mutual decision we'd been working toward together. As if I'd been consulted about the destruction of our family. "I know you know," she continued, "and I know you're hurt, but maybe this is better. For both of us. Better." The word echoed in my head as she settled into sleep beside me. Better for whom? Better how? Better than the life we'd built together, the promises we'd made, the children we'd brought into this world. I lay awake until dawn, listening to her breathe, planning my next move. Because Amelia was right about one thing. We did need to talk, but it wasn't going to be the conversation she was expecting. The next morning arrived with the kind of crisp October clarity that makes everything seem sharper, more defined. I woke up before my alarm, which had become a habit lately. Sleep was increasingly elusive when you shared a bed with someone who'd rather be somewhere else. Amelia was already in the shower, singing softly to herself. She only sang when she was happy, and she hadn't been happy at home in months. The math wasn't complicated. I made coffee and breakfast for the girls, going through the motions of normalcy while my mind worked through possibilities. In my profession, you learn to think several steps ahead, to anticipate how systems might fail and what you'll do when they do. "Dad, you're making weird faces," Emma observed, looking up from her scrambled eggs. "Just thinking about work, sweetheart." Lily, ever the detective, studied me with those sharp eyes she'd inherited from me. "You've been thinking about work a lot lately. More than usual." "Smart kid. Too smart sometimes." Amelia appeared in the kitchen looking like she'd stepped out of a magazine. Navy dress that hugged her figure, heels that added 3 inches to her height, makeup applied with professional precision. She was dressed to impress, and it wasn't for her coworkers. "Big day?" I asked. "Board presentation," she replied without meeting my eyes. "Might run late again." Another lie. I'd checked her company's website the night before. No board meetings scheduled for today. After everyone left, I sat in the quiet kitchen with my second cup of coffee and opened my laptop. Time to do what I did best. gather information, and analyze patterns. First stop, our joint credit card statements. What I found there painted a clear picture. Charges at expensive restaurants on days when Amelia claimed to be working late, a hotel charge from last Tuesday when she'd supposedly been at a work conference in the city, except the hotel was local, 15 minutes from our house, purchases at Victoria's Secret, a store she hadn't shopped at in years. The tennis club membership was particularly interesting. The charges showed she'd been going there 3 times a week for the past 4 months, always on the same days, always at the same time, always when Greg Carter's membership showed activity. My phone rang, interrupting my investigation. "Ethan, it's Ryan. You got a minute?" "Sure. What's up?" "Look, this is awkward, but I think you need to know something about Amelia." I closed my eyes. "Go ahead." "I saw her yesterday afternoon at that new Italian place downtown. She wasn't alone." "Greg Carter?" Ryan was quiet for a moment. "You already knew." "I suspected. Now I know." "Man, I'm sorry. I wasn't sure if I should say anything, but you did the right thing. What did you see?" "Enough." They weren't exactly hiding it. Holding hands across the table, that whole thing, she looked happy, really happy. Happy. There was that word again. "Thanks for telling me," I said. "What are you going to do?" "Good question. What was I going to do?" The old Ethan, the one who'd spent 12 years trying to be the perfect husband, might have confronted her directly, might have suggested counseling or tried to win her back with grand gestures and renewed attention. But that Ethan was based on the assumption that this marriage was worth saving. That assumption was looking increasingly questionable. "I'm going to think about it," I told Ryan. After hanging up, I made a decision that would have seemed impossible a week ago. I was going to fight back. Not with tears or pleading or desperate attempts to rekindle romance. I was going to use the skills that made me good at my job, patience, planning, and the ability to exploit weaknesses in seemingly secure systems. My first move was subtle. I changed the password on our joint savings account, the one Amelia had been dipping into for her extracurricular activities. Nothing dramatic, just a simple security update that would require her to call me if she wanted access. Next, I did something I'd never done in 12 years of marriage. I went through her things. Systematically, methodically, the way I'd analyze a compromised network. Her laptop was password protected, but I knew Amelia. She used the same password for everything, Emma's birthday followed by Lily's. Not very creative for someone having an affair. What I found in her email and text messages was worse than I'd imagined. Not just evidence of the affair, but the casual cruelty of her conversations with Taylor and Julia about our marriage. "Ethan is so predictable," she'd written to Taylor just 3 days ago. "He suspects something, but he won't do anything about it. He never does." To Julia, "Greg makes me feel alive again. I'd forgotten what that was like." And the one that made my hands shake with anger. "The girls will adjust. Kids are resilient. And honestly, they'll probably be happier with parents who aren't miserable together." She'd been planning this. Not just the affair, but the end of our marriage. She'd been making decisions about our children's future without consulting me, discussing our private life with friends who were probably taking bets on when I'd finally catch on, but it was the text conversation with Greg that pushed me over the edge. "Greg, when are you going to tell him?" Amelia, "Soon. I just need to figure out the financial stuff first. Make sure I get what I deserve." Greg, "What about the girls?" Amelia, "What about them? Ethan's a good father. He can handle the heavy lifting while we figure out our situation." Our situation. As if I was just an obstacle to be managed, a problem to be solved so they could get on with their real lives. I printed everything, every text, every email, every credit card statement. Then I organized it all into a neat folder, the way I'd prepare documentation for a security breach report. The house felt different when I was done. Not like a home anymore, but like a crime scene where evidence had been collected and cataloged, which in a way it was. That evening, Amelia came home at her usual time, 7:30, just late enough to avoid helping with dinner and homework, but not so late as to raise obvious questions. "How was your day?" she asked, the same question she'd asked every day for 12 years. "Productive," I said. "Very productive." She gave me a sharp look, as if something in my tone had caught her attention. But then Lily ran in with a math problem, and the moment passed. We went through the motions of a normal evening. Dinner conversation about school and weekend plans, help with homework, bedtime stories for Emma. But underneath it all, I could feel the tension building like pressure in a sealed container. When the girls were finally asleep, Amelia and I found ourselves alone in the living room for the first time in weeks. She was on her phone, as usual, probably texting Greg about their next meeting. "Amelia," I said. "Hmm?" She didn't look up from her screen. "We need to talk." Now she looked at me, and I saw something flicker in her eyes. Concern? Fear? Or just annoyance that I was interrupting her evening routine? "About what?" "About us. About what you want." She set down her phone, and I could see her calculating, trying to figure out how much I knew and how much she could get away with. "Ethan, I know about Greg." The words hung in the air between us like a challenge. Amelia's face went through several expressions: surprise, guilt, defiance, and finally something that looked almost like relief. "How long have you known?" "Long enough." She nodded slowly. "So, what happens now?" "That depends on you. Do you want to try to fix this, or are you done?" It was a test, and we both knew it. The right answer, the answer that might have saved our marriage, would have been tears, apologies, promises to end it with Greg and work on our relationship. Instead, she looked at me with something that might have been pity. "I think we've been done for a long time, Ethan. We've just been too comfortable to admit it. Comfortable, 12 years of marriage, 2 children, a life built together," and she reduced it to comfort. "What about the girls?" "They'll be fine. Children adapt, and honestly, they'll probably be happier when we stop pretending everything is okay." There it was, the same line she'd used in her text to Julia. She'd been rehearsing this conversation, probably with Greg's input. "So you've already decided." "Haven't you? Deep down, haven't you been thinking the same thing?" The honest answer was no. Despite everything, despite the evidence I'd collected and the betrayal I'd uncovered, part of me had still hoped we could find our way back to each other. But looking at her now, seeing the relief in her eyes at finally being able to stop pretending, I realized how naive that hope had been. "I guess I have," I said. She smiled then, the first genuine smile she'd given me in months. "I'm glad we can be mature about this, for the girls' sake." Mature. As if her affair was just a minor disagreement we were working through like adults. "There's just one thing," I said. "What's that?" I stood up and walked to the front hallway where I'd placed her suitcase earlier that evening. It was packed with 3 days' worth of clothes and toiletries, everything she'd need for an extended stay somewhere else. "I think you should go stay with Greg for a while. Give us both some space to figure out what comes next." Her smile faltered. "Ethan, that's not... I wasn't planning to just leave tonight." "Why not? You've been leaving a little bit more each day for months. This just makes it official." I could see her trying to regain control of the situation, to steer the conversation back to the script she'd prepared. "The girls will ask questions." "I'll handle the girls." "We need to discuss logistics, money, custody arrangements." "We will, but not tonight. Tonight you get what you've been wanting for months. Complete freedom." She stared at the suitcase as if it were a snake that might bite her. This wasn't how she'd planned it. In her version, she would have been the one making the dramatic exit, leaving me to pick up the pieces while she started her new life with Greg. "You can't just kick me out of my own house." "I'm not kicking you out. I'm giving you what you want. Space to figure out your situation with Greg without having to sneak around." The word situation hit its mark. I saw her flinch as she recognized her own language thrown back at her. "Fine," she said, her voice tight with anger. "But this isn't over. We have a lot to work out." "Yes, we do." She grabbed the suitcase and headed for the door, then stopped and turned back to me. "You know, I never meant for it to happen this way." "Yes, you did. You planned every bit of it. The only thing you didn't plan was me finding out before you were ready." She opened her mouth to argue, then seemed to think better of it. Instead, she walked out into the night, leaving me alone in the house that had been our home for 8 years. I locked the door behind her and went upstairs to check on the girls. They were both sleeping peacefully, unaware that their world had just shifted on its axis. Tomorrow, I would have to explain why Mommy wasn't there for breakfast. I would have to answer questions I wasn't ready for and provide stability I wasn't sure I could fake. But tonight, for the first time in months, the house felt peaceful. I woke up the next morning to the sound of Emma calling for her mother. For a moment, lying in bed that felt too big and too empty, I almost convinced myself the previous night had been a nightmare. Then reality crashed back in waves. "Dad!" Emma's voice was getting more insistent. "Where's Mom?" I found both girls in the kitchen, still in their pajamas, looking around as if Amelia might materialize from behind the refrigerator. "Mom had to go away for a few days," I said, starting the coffee maker and trying to sound casual. "Work stuff." Lily gave me that look again, the one that said she knew I wasn't telling the whole truth. "Her car's not in the garage." Smart kid. Too smart. She took it to work. At 6 in the morning? Emma, bless her trusting heart, accepted the explanation and started chattering about a school project. But Lily kept watching me with those analytical eyes, filing away inconsistencies for future reference. My phone buzzed with a text from Amelia. "We need to talk about telling the girls." I typed back, "Not yet. Let's see how things develop. Don't make this harder than it needs to be." Harder than it needs to be, as if there was an easy way to tell your children that their mother had chosen another man over their family. The morning routine felt strange without Amelia's presence, but also simpler. No tension in the air, no careful navigation around unspoken resentments, just me and the girls, figuring out breakfast and finding lost homework, and dealing with the ordinary chaos of getting ready for school. "Dad, you're different today," Emma observed as I braided her hair. "Different how?" "Less crinkly." Crinkly. Leave it to an 8-year-old to find the perfect word for the tension I'd been carrying around for months. After dropping them off, I drove to work with a strange sense of lightness. The worst thing I could imagine had happened, my marriage was over, and somehow the world hadn't ended. The sun was still shining, traffic still moved in predictable patterns, life continued. But the lightness didn't last long. Around 10 a.m., my phone rang. "Ethan, it's Greg Carter." I almost laughed. Of all the ways I'd imagined this conversation might start, having him call me directly wasn't one of them. "Greg, how can I help you?" "Look, I think we should meet. Talk about this situation like adults." There was that word again, situation, as if he'd rehearsed this conversation with Amelia. "What situation is that?" "Come on, man. We both know what's going on here. Amelia told me you guys talked last night." "Did she also tell you she's staying with you now?" Silence on the other end. Apparently that part of the conversation hadn't made it into Amelia's report. "She's... what?" "I packed her a bag. Figured she might as well be honest about where she wants to be." "Ethan, I think there's been a misunderstanding." "No misunderstanding. My wife is having an affair with you. She's decided she wants out of our marriage. I'm giving her what she wants. What's to misunderstand?" "It's not that simple." "Sure it is. You wanted her, you got her. Congratulations." I hung up before he could respond. Let him deal with the reality of what he'd been pursuing. Let him explain to his neighbors why Amelia's car was in his driveway overnight. The rest of the morning passed in a blur of meetings and technical reviews, but I couldn't concentrate. My mind kept drifting to practical concerns. How to explain Amelia's absence to the girls' teachers, whether to cancel our weekend plans with other families, what to do about the country club membership we couldn't afford without dual incomes. Around noon, my phone buzzed with another text, this time from Taylor, Amelia's gossipy friend. "Heard about you and Amelia. So sorry. If you need anything..." Word was already spreading. In a community like ours, news traveled fast, especially news this juicy. I could imagine the conversations happening over lunch, the speculation about who was at fault and who would get the house. But the text that really caught my attention came an hour later, from Julia. Ethan, I hope you know not all of us supported what Amelia was doing. Some of us tried to talk sense into her." Interesting. Cracks in Amelia's support system. I filed that information away for future use. The afternoon brought an unexpected visitor to my office, Detective Martinez from the local police department. For a moment, my heart stopped. Had something happened to the girls? "Mr. Drake, I'm here about a complaint filed by your wife." "What kind of complaint?" "She claims you've locked her out of your joint bank accounts and stolen her personal belongings." I almost laughed. I changed a password on our savings account for security reasons, and I packed a suitcase with her clothes because she decided to move out. Hardly theft. Detective Martinez looked uncomfortable. "Sir, I have to ask, is there any truth to her allegations that you've been threatening her?" "Threatening her how?" "She claims you've been sending intimidating messages and following her." Now I did laugh, a sound with no humor in it. "Detective, yesterday I discovered my wife has been having an affair for months. Last night she confirmed she wants a divorce. I packed her a bag and suggested she stay with her boyfriend while we figure out the details. I haven't sent her any messages except about arrangements for our children, and I certainly haven't been following her around." He made notes in a small notebook. "Can you account for your whereabouts last night after she left?" Quote, "I was home with my daughters. You can ask them, or my neighbor Ryan Martinez if you need confirmation." "That won't be necessary right now. But Mr. Drake, I have to advise you to be very careful about any contact with your wife going forward. Divorce situations can escalate quickly." After he left, I sat in my office feeling a new kind of anger. Not the hot, immediate rage of betrayal, but something colder and more calculating. Amelia wasn't content to simply leave our marriage. She was trying to control the narrative, to make herself the victim in a story where she'd been the one making choices. That evening, I picked up the girls and took them out for pizza, partly to avoid the empty house and partly to maintain some sense of normalcy. Emma chattered happily about her day, but Lily was quiet, picking at her food and studying my face. "Dad, is Mom coming home tonight?" The question I'd been dreading. "I don't think so, sweetheart." "Is she coming home tomorrow?" "I don't know." "Are you and Mom getting divorced?" Emma stopped mid-sentence, suddenly aware that something serious was happening. I looked at my daughters, Lily with her serious expression and Emma with her wide, worried eyes, and made a decision that would shape everything that came next. "Your mom and I are having some problems," I said carefully. "She's staying somewhere else for a while so we can both think about what we want." "What does that mean?" Emma asked. "It means things might change, but what won't change is that we both love you very much, and we're both going to take care of you no matter what happens between us." Lily nodded as if she'd expected this answer. "Is she staying with that tennis guy?" My heart stopped. "What tennis guy?" "Greg. I heard you and Mom talking about him, and I saw them together at the club last week when you picked me up from swimming." Of course she had. Lily noticed everything. "Yes, she's staying with Greg." "Do you hate her?" The question caught me off guard with its directness. "No, sweetheart, I don't hate Mom. I'm angry with her, and I'm sad about our marriage, but I don't hate her." "Do you hate Greg?" That one was harder to answer honestly. "I'm not happy with Greg's choices, but hate is a strong word." Emma had been listening with the intensity of someone trying to understand a foreign language. "Are we still going to live in our house?" "Yes. This is your home, and it's going to stay your home." "What about Mom?" "I don't know yet. We'll have to see." That night, after the girls were in bed, I sat in the living room with a glass of wine and my laptop, going through the evidence I'd collected: photos, text messages, credit card statements, hotel receipts, enough to tell a clear story of deception and betrayal. But as I looked through it all, I realized something important. I didn't want to destroy Amelia. Despite everything she'd done, despite the lies and the casual cruelty of her conversations with friends, she was still the mother of my children. They would need her to be a functioning adult, not a broken woman crushed by public humiliation. What I wanted was simpler and more complex. I wanted her to understand the consequences of her choices. I wanted her to face the reality of what she'd done to our family. And I wanted to make sure that when our marriage officially ended, I was in a position to protect my daughter's interests. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "This is Greg. We really need to talk." I stared at the message for a long moment, then typed back, "No, we don't. Please, this whole thing is getting out of hand." "You're right. It got out of hand when you started having an affair with my wife. But that's your problem now, not mine." "Amelia is talking about lawyers, about taking the girls." That got my attention. "What do you mean?" "She thinks you're trying to manipulate the situation. She wants to file for emergency custody." I felt that cold anger again, the kind that made my hands steady and my mind clear. Emergency custody. Based on what? The fact that I'd discovered her affair and asked her to leave? "Tell Amelia she's welcome to try," I typed, "but she should be prepared to explain to a judge why she thinks a stable home with their father is less suitable than whatever arrangement she's planning with you." "Ethan, please. Can we just meet and talk about this reasonably?" "I am being reasonable. I'm letting my wife's boyfriend have my wife. I'm providing a stable home for my children. I'm not asking for anything except honesty about what's happening. If that's not reasonable enough for you, then you're going to find out what unreasonable looks like." I turned off my phone after that. Let them stew in whatever drama they'd created for themselves. I had bigger concerns, like making sure my daughters felt secure in a world that had just become much more complicated. But as I got ready for bed in a room that still smelled like Amelia's perfume, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. The opening moves in a game I'd never wanted to play, but was apparently going to have to master. Because if Amelia thought she could rewrite history and make me the villain in her story, she was about to discover that I'd learned a few things about strategy and patience in my 15 years of marriage. The game was just getting started. The next morning brought an email that changed everything. It was from Jennifer at the tennis club, the same woman who'd called about Amelia's membership. "Mr. Drake, I hope I'm not overstepping, but I thought you should know that Mr. Carter's membership was suspended yesterday due to inappropriate conduct with another member's spouse. There was an incident in the parking lot involving Mrs. Carter, Greg's wife Olivia, and your wife. Security had to intervene. I thought you might want to know before word spreads further." Olivia Carter. I'd forgotten about Greg's wife in all of this. She was a sharp woman, a lawyer who worked downtown. Apparently, she had figured out what was going on and decided to handle it directly. I was still processing this information when my phone rang. "Mr. Drake, this is Olivia Carter. I believe we need to talk." Her voice was crisp, professional, with an edge that suggested she was used to getting what she wanted. "Mrs. Carter, I was just reading about yesterday's incident at the club." "Yes, well, your wife and my husband apparently thought they were being discreet. They were wrong. Can you meet me for coffee this morning? I think we have some common interests to discuss." An hour later, I was sitting across from Olivia Carter in a small cafe downtown, studying the woman whose husband had been sharing my wife. She was attractive in a sharp, intimidating way. Dark hair pulled back severely, expensive suit, eyes that missed nothing. "I'm going to be direct," she said without preamble. "My husband is an idiot, but he's my idiot, and I don't appreciate him embarrassing our family with this middle-aged crisis of his." "I can understand that." "Your wife, on the other hand, seems to think she's found her meal ticket. She's been telling people at the club that Greg is leaving me and that they're planning a future together." This was news to me. "Is he? Leaving you?" Olivia's laugh was sharp as broken glass. "Greg isn't leaving anyone. He's having a fantasy, and your wife is the supporting actress. But when reality sets in, when he realizes what divorce would actually cost him, he'll come crawling back like he always does." "This has happened before?" "Greg has affairs the way other men have hobbies. Usually I ignore them until they burn themselves out. But this time is different." "How?" "Your wife isn't content to be a discreet distraction. She's making demands, talking about leaving her husband, expecting Greg to play house with her and her children. She's forcing the issue, and that makes her dangerous to my marriage." I sipped my coffee, trying to process this information. "What do you want from me?" "I want her out of the picture, permanently." "She's already out of my picture. We're getting divorced." "That's not enough. As long as she thinks Greg is an option, she'll keep pushing. She needs to understand that he's not available for whatever fantasy she's constructed." "And how do you propose to make that clear?" Olivia smiled, and it wasn't a pleasant expression. "Leave that to me, but I need you to do something for me in return." "Which is?" "Don't make this easy for her. Don't give her the quick, clean divorce she wants. Make her work for it. Make her face the consequences of her choices." "I have children to consider. I'm not interested in a scorched earth divorce." "I'm not talking about scorched earth. I'm talking about justice. Your wife destroyed your marriage for a man who was never going to leave his wife. She should understand what that means." I left the cafe with mixed feelings. Olivia Carter was clearly a formidable woman, and having her as an ally could be useful. But there was something cold about her that made me uncomfortable. She talked about her marriage like a business arrangement, and about Greg's affairs like minor accounting errors. Still, she'd given me valuable information. If Amelia thought Greg was going to leave his wife and play happy family with her, she was in for a rude awakening. That afternoon brought another surprise. I was working from home, trying to catch up on projects I'd neglected during the drama of the past week, when the doorbell rang. It was Amelia, but not the composed, confident woman who'd left 3 nights ago. Her hair was disheveled, her makeup smeared, and her clothes looked like she'd slept in them. "We need to talk," she said, pushing past me into the house. "The girls aren't home yet," I said, closing the door. "They're at after-school care." "Good. This is between us?" She walked into the living room and turned to face me, and I could see she'd been crying. "Greg's wife showed up at his condo last night. I heard there was some drama at the tennis club." "Drama?" Amelia's voice rose. "She threatened to ruin me, Ethan. She knows people, important people. She says she can make sure I never work in this town again." "What did you expect? That she'd be happy about her husband's affair?" "I expected Greg to handle his own wife." "And did he?" The look on Amelia's face told me everything I needed to know. "He says he needs time to think, that things are moving too fast." I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. "So you're discovering that fantasy and reality are different things. Don't be smug, Ethan. This affects you too. If I can't work, if I can't support myself, then maybe you should have thought about that before you decided to blow up our marriage." She stared at me as if I'd slapped her. "You're different. You're not acting like yourself." "I'm acting like someone whose wife has been lying to him for months. Someone who discovered that his partner in life had been planning to leave him while pretending everything was fine. I never meant for it to happen this way." "How did you mean for it to happen? You were going to keep sneaking around forever? Or were you planning to ask me politely for a divorce once you'd secured your backup plan?" She sank into the chair where she used to sit every evening, scrolling through her phone and planning her next meeting with Greg. "I was confused. I am confused. Everything happened so fast with Greg, and I got caught up in the excitement of it, and you forgot you had a family. That's not fair. Fair? I sat down across from her, maintaining the distance that had become natural between us. You want to talk about fair? Let's talk about our daughters asking me every day when you're coming home. Let's talk about me having to explain why Mommy suddenly doesn't live here anymore. Let's talk about you filing a false police report claiming I threatened you. She had the grace to look ashamed about that last part. I was scared. Greg said you might try to make things difficult. Greg was right. I am going to make things difficult. Not out of spite, but because our children deserve better than having their lives upended for your midlife crisis. It's not a midlife crisis. Then what is it? Love? Because if you loved Greg, you would have asked me for a divorce before you started having an affair. If you loved our children, you would have considered how this would affect them. If you had any love left for me, you wouldn't have spent months lying to my face while planning your exit strategy. She was crying now, but they weren't the tears of someone who was sorry. They were the tears of someone whose plan had fallen apart. I want to come home, she said quietly. No. Ethan, please. We can work through this. We can go to counseling. It's too late for that. It's not too late. People get past affairs all the time. We can rebuild. Amelia, stop. She looked up at me, hope and desperation warring in her eyes. I read your text messages. I know what you really think of me, of our marriage, of our life together. You didn't have an affair because you were unhappy. You had an affair because you were bored, and you thought I was weak enough to either never find out or to take you back when your adventure was over. That's not true. Which part? That you were bored, or that you thought I was weak? She couldn't answer, which was answer enough. Here's what's going to happen, I continued. We're going to get divorced. You're going to have reasonable visitation with the girls, but they're going to live here, in their home, with stability and routine. You're going to get a job that doesn't depend on Greg's wife's approval, and you're going to rebuild your life without expecting me to make it easy for you. And what about us? What about 15 years of marriage? What about them? You threw them away for a man who's already backing away from you. I'm just acknowledging reality. She sat in silence for several minutes, and I could see her trying different approaches in her mind, looking for the angle that would get her what she wanted. The girls need their mother. Yes, they do. So be their mother. But you can't be their mother and my wife. You made that choice. Ethan, please, I made a mistake. You made dozens of mistakes. Every lie, every secret meeting, every night you came home smelling like another man, those were all choices. The only mistake you made was thinking I'd never find out, or that I'd be grateful to have you back when your backup plan fell through. The front door opened, and I heard Emma's voice calling out. Amelia quickly wiped her eyes and tried to compose herself. Mommy! Emma ran into the room and threw herself at Amelia, who caught her and held on like she was drowning. Lily appeared in the doorway, taking in the scene with those sharp eyes. Are you coming home, Mom? Emma asked. Amelia looked at me over Emma's head, one last plea in her eyes. Not tonight, baby, she said. But I'm going to see you lots, okay? We're going to have special time together, just you and me and Lily. Why can't you just come home? Because sometimes grown-ups need to live in different places for a while, but that doesn't change how much I love you. It was a good answer, better than I'd expected. Maybe there was still some part of the woman I'd married left inside her. After she left, I made dinner for the girls and helped with homework, going through the motions of normal family life while my mind processed the day's revelations. Amelia's fantasy was crumbling, Greg was retreating, and Olivia Carter was planning some kind of revenge. But the most important thing I'd learned was that Amelia still didn't understand what she'd done. She thought this was a temporary setback, a problem to be solved so she could get back to pursuing her happiness. She was wrong about that, just like she'd been wrong about me. As I tucked the girls into bed that night, Emma asked the question I'd been dreading. Daddy, are you and Mommy going to get back together? I looked into her trusting eyes and made a promise I intended to keep. I don't know what's going to happen with Mommy and me, sweetheart. But I promise you that no matter what, you and Lily are going to be okay. You're going to have a home and people who love you and everything you need to grow up happy and strong. Even if you and Mommy don't live together anymore? Even then. She nodded solemnly, as if filing this information away for future reference. Later, sitting alone in the quiet house, I realized that something fundamental had shifted. I was no longer the man trying to save his marriage. I was the father protecting his children's future, and that was a role I understood much better. The game had changed, and so had I. 2 weeks later, I was beginning to understand that divorce wasn't an event. It was a process, messy and complicated and full of unexpected revelations. Amelia had moved back in with her parents temporarily, a development that seemed to surprise everyone, including her. Greg needed space, she'd explained to the girls during one of her awkward visits, and Grandma and Grandpa missed having me around. What she didn't tell them was that Greg had asked her to move out of his condo after Olivia Carter had shown up at his office with a team of lawyers and a detailed accounting of their marital assets. Apparently, the reality of what a divorce would cost him had been quite sobering. I learned this from Ryan, who'd heard it from his wife, who'd heard it from Julia, who'd gotten the story directly from Taylor, who'd been on the phone with Amelia when the lawyers arrived. The suburban gossip network was more efficient than any intelligence agency. "So what's your next move?" Ryan asked. We were sitting in my backyard, watching the girls play on their swing set, trying to pretend their world hadn't been turned upside down. "I don't have a next move. I'm just trying to keep things stable for Lily and Emma." "Come on, man. You've got to be feeling some satisfaction about Greg backing down." The truth was, I felt mostly tired. The adrenaline of discovery and confrontation had faded, leaving behind the grinding reality of single parenthood, and the knowledge that this was just the beginning of a long, complicated process. "I don't care about Greg," I said. "He's Olivia's problem now." "What about Amelia?" That was a harder question. What about Amelia? She was the mother of my children, the woman I'd loved for 15 years, the person who'd shared my bed and my dreams and my daily life. She was also a stranger who'd been living a double life while I'd been planning our future. She made her choice. Now she gets to live with it. But even as I said it, I knew it wasn't that simple. Amelia wasn't just going to disappear from our lives. We'd be connected forever through Lily and Emma, which meant finding a way to coexist that didn't damage our daughters. That evening, after the girls were in bed, I was reviewing divorce papers when my phone rang. Unknown number again, but this time it wasn't Greg. "Mr. Drake, this is Patricia Hendricks. I'm an attorney representing your wife." "I see. What can I do for you?" "My client would like to discuss a settlement arrangement that would be beneficial to both parties." "I'm listening." "She's prepared to agree to joint custody of your daughters, with them residing primarily with you during the school year. In exchange, she'd like to retain her share of the marital assets and receive reasonable spousal support while she reestablishes her career." Reasonable spousal support. Code for "I want you to pay for my mistakes." And what does she consider reasonable? Given the length of your marriage and her current employment situation, we think $3,000 a month for 5 years would be appropriate. I did quick math in my head. $36,000 a year for 5 years. Nearly $200,000 total to support the woman who destroyed our marriage. "I'll need to think about it." "Of course. But Mr. Drake, I should mention that if we can't reach an amicable agreement, my client is prepared to pursue a more aggressive approach. She has concerns about the children's welfare in the current arrangement." There it was, the threat I'd been expecting. Agree to her terms, or she'd try to take the girls. "What kind of concerns?" "She feels that your reaction to the marital difficulties has been disproportionate. She's worried about your emotional stability and your ability to provide a nurturing environment." I almost laughed. The woman who'd abandoned her children to shack up with her tennis partner was questioning my emotional stability. "Ms. Hendricks, let me save us both some time. If your client wants to go to court and explain to a judge why she thinks the children would be better off with a mother who left them to pursue an affair, she's welcome to try. But she should be prepared to answer some difficult questions about her choices over the past 6 months. Mr. Drake, I don't think you understand the seriousness of... I understand perfectly. Your client thought she could have her cake and eat it too. When that didn't work out, she decided to come back and try to salvage what she could from the wreckage. Now she's discovering that actions have consequences. Are you refusing to negotiate? I'm refusing to be blackmailed. If Amelia wants to discuss custody and support arrangements like reasonable adults, I'm happy to do that. But if she wants to threaten me with false accusations about my parenting, she's going to find out what a real fight looks like. I hung up and immediately called my own attorney, a sharp woman named Rebecca Chen who'd been recommended by a colleague. If Amelia wanted to play hardball, I needed to be prepared. She's testing you, Rebecca said after I'd explained the situation. This is a common tactic. Make threats to see if you'll fold and give her what she wants to avoid a custody battle. Will she actually follow through? Hard to say. Does she have any legitimate grounds to question your fitness as a parent? None. I've been the primary caretaker since she moved out. The girls are doing well, keeping up with school, maintaining their routines. If anything, they're more stable now than they were when she was here, but mentally checked out. Then let her make her threats. Meanwhile, we'll prepare our own case. Document everything, your daily routine with the girls, their school performance, their emotional state. If this goes to court, We want to show that you're providing a stable, loving home. The next few days passed in a strange kind of suspended animation. I went through the motions of normal life: work, school pickup, homework help, bedtime stories, while preparing for a battle I'd never wanted to fight. Then Olivia Carter called again. I thought you'd want to know that Greg filed for divorce yesterday. I'm sorry to hear that. I wasn't really, but it seemed like the polite thing to say. Don't be. I've been planning this for years, waiting for him to give me grounds that would hold up in court. Your wife did me a favor by being so public about their affair. What does this mean for Amelia? It means her backup plan just evaporated. Greg's going to be paying me substantial alimony and child support. He won't have the resources to support another family, even if he wanted to. I felt a strange mix of satisfaction and pity. Satisfaction because Amelia was finally facing the reality of her choices. Pity because she'd thrown away a stable life for a fantasy that was never going to materialize. There's something else, Olivia continued. I may have mentioned to a few people at the club about your wife's situation. Word tends to spread in our social circle. What kind of word? The kind that makes it difficult to maintain friendships with other married women. Adultery is contagious, you know. Wives don't like having friends who've proven they can't be trusted around husbands. So Amelia wasn't just losing Greg. She was losing her entire social network. The life she'd built for herself was crumbling piece by piece. That weekend, she came to pick up the girls for their first overnight visit since she'd moved out. She looked tired and older, as if the stress of the past month had aged her years. How are you holding up? I asked, and was surprised to find I meant it. I've been better. She managed a weak smile. I suppose you've heard about Greg. Some of it. I was an idiot, wasn't I? It was the first time she'd acknowledged that her choices might have been mistakes, and I didn't know how to respond. You made some poor decisions, I said finally. Poor decisions? She laughed, but there was no humor in it. That's one way to put it. The girls came running downstairs with their overnight bags, excited about staying with Grandma and Grandpa. They hugged me goodbye, and for a moment we looked like a normal divorced family making the transition work for everyone. After they left, I sat in the quiet house and tried to figure out what I was feeling. Not satisfaction. Amelia's downfall wasn't giving me the sense of justice I'd expected. Not pity, exactly, though there was some of that. Mostly I felt tired and sad and ready for this chapter of our lives to be over. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. This is Patricia Hendricks. My client would like to revisit settlement discussions. When would be convenient? I stared at the message for a long moment, then typed back, Have her call me directly. We can work this out without lawyers if she's ready to be honest about what she wants and what she's willing to give up to get it. An hour later, my phone rang. Ethan, it's me. Hello, Amelia. I think I'm ready to talk. Really talk. About what happens next. Okay, I'm listening. Can I come over tomorrow, after I bring the girls back? Sure. And Ethan? Thank you for not making this uglier than it had to be. I know I don't deserve your consideration, but I'm grateful for it. After she hung up, I poured myself a glass of wine and sat on the back porch, looking out at the yard where my daughters played every day, where Amelia and I had once planned to grow old together. Tomorrow, we'd finally have the conversation we should have had months ago. Honest, difficult, but necessary. We'd figure out how to end our marriage with whatever dignity we could salvage, and how to raise our children in 2 homes instead of 1. It wasn't the ending I'd imagined for our story, but maybe it was the one we needed. Maybe it was time to stop fighting and start healing. The game was almost over, and surprisingly, I wasn't sure there would be any winners. The next evening, Amelia returned with the girls as promised, but she looked different somehow. More settled, less frantic than she'd been in recent weeks. The girls ran inside to show me their drawings from Grandma's house, leaving us alone on the front porch. They had a good time, she said, watching them through the window. Good, they needed that. We stood in awkward silence for a moment, 2 people who'd shared everything for 15 years and now struggled to find common ground for a simple conversation. Would you like some coffee? I asked finally. That would be nice. We sat at the kitchen table where we'd shared thousands of meals, where we'd helped with homework and planned vacations and discussed our dreams for the future. Now we were here to plan the end of our marriage. I owe you an apology, she said without preamble. Not just for the affair, but for how I handled everything. The lying, the police report, the lawyer threats, all of it. Okay. I was scared and angry, and I felt like you were trying to control the situation, to punish me. Maybe I was, a little. She looked surprised by my honesty. I was hurt, I continued. And yes, I wanted you to face consequences for what you'd done, but mostly I just wanted you to be honest about what you wanted. I thought I knew what I wanted. Greg seemed like everything you weren't. Spontaneous, exciting, free from responsibilities. I got caught up in the fantasy of a different life. And now? Now I realize that fantasy was never real. Greg was never going to leave his wife. He was never going to want to raise my children or deal with the complications of real life. He just wanted the fun parts. I sipped my coffee and waited for her to continue. I threw away something real for something that was never going to last. I know that now. So what do you want, Amelia? Really want, not what your lawyer thinks you should ask for. She was quiet for a long time, staring into her coffee cup as if it might contain answers. I want my children to forgive me someday. I want them to understand that I made mistakes, but that I never stopped loving them. They know you love them. I want to be a good mother to them, even if we're not all living in the same house. That's up to you. And I want... She paused, struggling with the words. I want to find a way to forgive myself for destroying our family. It was the most honest thing she'd said to me in months. We both made mistakes, Amelia. The marriage was in trouble before Greg came along. Maybe we were just too comfortable, too afraid of change to address the real problems. Do you think we could have fixed it if I hadn't had the affair? I considered the question seriously. I don't know. Maybe, but that's not the path we took. No, it's not. We talked for 2 hours that night. Really talked for the first time since I'd discovered her affair. We talked about money and custody and practical arrangements, but also about forgiveness and responsibility and what we owed our children going forward. By the time she left, we'd reached an agreement that felt fair to both of us. She would take a smaller settlement, enough to get back on her feet, but not enough to live comfortably without working. The girls would live with me during the school year, but spend summers and holidays with her. We'd share decisions about their education and health care, and we'd both commit to speaking respectfully about each other in front of them. There's one more thing, she said as she was leaving. I know you have evidence, photos, text messages, all of it. I'm asking you not to use it to hurt me more than I've already hurt myself. I thought about the folder on my desk, filled with documentation of her betrayal. For weeks, it had felt like ammunition, proof of my righteousness and her guilt. I won't use it unless you force me to, I said. But Amelia, if you ever try to take the girls from me or make false accusations again, all bets are off. I understand. And if you ever put the girls in a position where they have to choose between us or use them as weapons in whatever battles you're fighting, I will make sure everyone knows exactly what kind of person you really are. She nodded, accepting the terms. I deserve that. I deserve all of it. After she left, I went upstairs to check on the girls. Emma was already asleep, but Lily was reading in bed. Is Mom okay? She asked without looking up from her book. She's going to be okay. We both are. Are you getting divorced? Yes. Good. The word surprised me. Good? You've been happier since she moved out, and she was making everyone sad when she lived here. Out of the mouths of babes. Things are going to be different from now on, I said. But different doesn't have to be bad. I know, Emma's worried, but I told her we'd be fine. We've got you, and you're the one who takes care of us anyway. I kissed her forehead and turned off her light, marveling at the resilience of children and their ability to see through adult complications to simple truths. Over the next few months, we settled into a new routine. The divorce was finalized with minimal drama. Amelia got a job with a smaller firm across town, found a modest apartment, and began the slow process of rebuilding her life. The girls adjusted better than I'd expected, splitting their time between 2 homes but maintaining the stability of their school and friends. Greg Carter moved to another state after his own divorce was finalized, apparently deciding that a fresh start was preferable to facing the wreckage of his reputation in our community. Olivia got the house, the business, and a substantial settlement. She sent me a bottle of expensive wine with a note. Thank you for your cooperation in a mutually beneficial outcome. As for me, I learned things about myself I hadn't expected. I was a better single parent than I'd thought I'd be. I was stronger than I'd given myself credit for. And I was capable of forgiveness, even when forgiveness seemed impossible. The house felt different now, smaller in some ways, but also more peaceful. The girls laughed more, brought friends over more often, and seemed to relax in ways they hadn't when Amelia and I were pretending our marriage was working. One evening, about 6 months after Amelia had moved out, Emma asked me a question that caught me off guard. Daddy, are you lonely? We were making dinner together, something that had become our routine. She was standing on a stool, helping me chop vegetables with a plastic knife. Sometimes, I said honestly, But I have you and Lily, so I'm never really alone. But don't you want a wife? Someday, maybe, but right now I'm happy with our family just the way it is. She nodded solemnly, as if filing this information away for future reference. If you do get a new wife, can we meet her first? To make sure she's nice? Absolutely. Any new wife would have to pass the Emma and Lily test. Good, because we're pretty awesome, so she'd have to be awesome too. I laughed, struck by the simple wisdom of 8-year-old logic. That night, after the girls were asleep, I sat in my office and looked at the folder of evidence I'd collected during the worst days of my marriage. Photos, text messages, credit card statements, a complete record of betrayal and deception. I'd kept it as insurance, proof of what had really happened in case I ever needed to defend myself or protect my daughters. But sitting there in the quiet house, surrounded by the life I'd built after everything fell apart, I realized I didn't need it anymore. I fed every page into the shredder, watching months of anger and hurt disappear into confetti. It felt like closing a door on the worst chapter of my life and opening another one on whatever came next. The game was over, and while there hadn't been any clear winners, we'd all survived. Amelia was learning to live with the consequences of her choices. The girls were adapting to their new reality with the remarkable resilience of children, and I was discovering that sometimes the end of one story was just the beginning of a better one. Outside, it was starting to rain, a gentle autumn shower that would water the garden and wash the last leaves from the trees. Inside, my daughters were sleeping safely in their beds, and I was finally at peace with the choices I'd made. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities, new possibilities, but tonight, for the first time in months, I was exactly where I belonged. The obligation to save my marriage was over. The obligation to build a good life for my children was just beginning, and that was a game I knew how to win.